Hi, this is Nick from PrimeLoops.com. Today I want to show you how to create a hip-hop beat in FL Studio. Now as you can see, I have a few drum sounds already loaded up here. And the way you load up a drum sound is simply to drag a sound from your browser over here, right over into the interface. I'll show you how to do that because I want to add one more sound to this kit before we get started. I'm going to grab a sound from our XXL Hip Hop Drums pack. I'll go to Open Hi-Hats and grab the Zazzle Open Hi-Hat. Drag it right in under the crash here, and as you can see, it automatically creates a new sampler channel right here. So let's get started on creating a beat. Along the way, we'll learn how to enter notes into the sequencer view here, as well as make some basic but important adjustments such as reducing high end and modifying the volume envelopes of each of our sounds. So the first thing to do is start putting together the basic beat. Now as you can see here, I have two different kick drums. One's a main kick drum, and then the other one is what I'm going to eventually turn into a ghost kick. The ghost kick is really just to emphasize the main kick, and I'll show you what that means when we actually put together the beat. So let's start with the easiest element first, and that's usually the snare drum. So I'm going to add that on every other quarter note. So far so good. Now I'll add in the main kick drum. Sounding good so far. And then last I'll add in the ghost kick hits. Now the thing with the ghost note, again because it just emphasizes the main kick drum here, is that less is more. So you don't want to overuse these. And in fact I'm only going to use two of them right here before the second hit of the main kick drum. Now this is sounding alright so far, but it needs a little bit of work. For one thing, the snare drum is going on for far too long, so let's adjust its volume envelope. As you can see, I just clicked on the snare channel here. If you click on this INS button right here, you'll get all of your envelopes. You want to go to your volume envelope, enable it, bring your attack all the way down because you want the drum to hit right away. And now I'll start demoing the beat while I manipulate these other parameters. As you can see, it's pretty easy to reduce how long a sample plays. All you have to do is modify the parameters that have to do with the release and body of the sound. That is, hold, decay, sustain, and release. I turned release all the way down, although that parameter is pretty much irrelevant here. The two most important parameters that we dealt with for the snare were the hold and the decay. Hold is simply the amount of time that the sample plays out. And then the decay is a little bit of time added on to the end of the hold period in order to give the sound a natural fading off. As you can hear, if I turn the decay all the way down, it sounds very unnatural and the sound cuts off abruptly. And then as you heard there, when I increase the decay a little bit, the sound has more of a natural trail off now. The next issue with the beat as it is so far is that the ghost kick is a little bit too loud and has a little bit too much high end on it. So I'm going to click on its channel, and the first adjustment I'm going to make is to reduce the volume. That's a little bit better. Now I'm going to filter off some of that high end using the low pass filter down here. If you click on this drop down, you get a bunch of different kinds of filters, but the default low pass setting is fine for what we're doing. Mod X is the same thing as the cutoff on a filter, and Mod Y is the same thing as resonance. So I'm going to bring down Mod X as I play the beat back until we get a nice high-end roll-off on this ghost kick. That sounds pretty good for now. Next we can add in the hi-hat and the shaker patterns. So we'll start with the hi-hat. So let's hear what that sounds like. That's not sounding so great right now, but we'll modify the sound a bit so that it combines nicely with the shaker, and together these two sounds will add a lot of swing to this otherwise pretty robotic beat. And also, of course, the swing parameter itself will go a long way towards making this beat sound a little less robotic. Next I'll add in the shaker sound. Now before I do anything else, let's make this beat swing a little bit more. As you can see, you have a simple slider up here that represents the amount of swing on the pattern. So I'll play it back while I adjust that until I get a good groove going. Now I think the main issue with the hi-hat and the shaker sounds is that they're a little loud in comparison to everything else. So we can remedy that with some basic volume and envelope adjustments. I'll start with the hi-hat, click on its channel here. I think I'll bring the pitch down just a tad on that. And also I will enable the volume envelope. Bring the attack all the way down, again so that the sound triggers right away. I'll bring the hold way down as well as the decay, so that it's more of a click than a full hi-hat sound. Now this sound is starting to blend into the beat a little more. Additionally, I'll modify the shaker sound. Now I'm pretty comfortable with the volume, but I think the pitch could be just a little bit lower. I think that's working nicely, so let's move on to the last two elements in the beat, the crash and the open hi-hat. Now what these two elements are really going to do is make the beat wrap around on itself quite nicely. That is, they're going to show up towards the end of the pattern here to signal that it's restarting. So I'll start with the crash sound. Now that one's simple. I'll just put in one trigger right here. And then for the Zazzle open hi-hat, I'll just add a trigger right here. So the first thing to modify with the crash cymbal, as you can see the envelope's already enabled, so I'm going to bring the attack all the way down, and again I don't want it to play out for nearly as long as it is right now. Now as I was tweaking that, you probably heard the sound play out and then all of a sudden reduce in volume, but still have kind of a weird release time. The reason that was happening was because I had the sustain parameter up a little bit. If I bring that back up here and then play back the beat, you can hear it trail off a little bit, and that doesn't sound so good in this context. So I just took the sustain all the way down and just worked with the hold and decay parameters to define how the sound trails off. Now listening back to this beat as a whole, that hi-hat sound is still sticking out a little bit too much. So I'll come back to the hi-hat and we'll mess around with its volume while demoing the beat. And there we go. Now the hi-hat is blending a lot better with the shaker sound. So let's just recap what we've gone over here. The first thing you'll probably want to start off with when you're making a beat in FL Studio is simply to load up some sounds. The easiest way to do that is just to drag a sound from your browser over to the channel interface here. Doing so will automatically create a new sampler interface and give you access to lots of essential controls in order to tweak your sound just how you want it. You saw how to re-level individual samples either by the shortcut of just dragging its knob around right here or clicking on it and modifying the volume parameter in the sampler interface. Additionally, we took a look at some of these effects features that are built into the sampler, most helpfully the filter, which we use to roll off the high end on some of our samples, as well as the volume envelope, which you just activate by clicking this button until it glows orange, and then modifying the parameters to taste. Now here's one thing I didn't tell you. The whole time that I was writing out this beat, I actually had a compressor and an EQ loaded up. If I just go up here to View and then Mixer, you can see that I have a fruity compressor loaded up, as well as the EQ. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to use both of those effects in order to further polish your beat. I'll see you next time for more music production tips and tricks. Stay creative.